Welcome everybody to another episode of the Seven Square Podcast. I got my main man with me, Mr. Corey Sigue. Corey, what's up? How's it going?
Oh man, it's all good in the neighborhood. I can't complain. Fighting this weather outside here, it was like 80 degrees yesterday. Now it was 50 today. And let me tell you something. It's a gift and a curse to have good insulation, boy. Because when I wake up, ain't no type of cold is leaving this house. I tell you that much. But I can't complain though.
I love it. I love it. Corey, today we're here again for another leadership tip. And the topic that I was thinking about, when we get hired, a lot of times, especially in the past, they hire you for a position. That position or that role may not necessarily fit you. So what you have to do is you got to get trained, you got to change who you are, you got to work yourself or mold yourself into the position. But when we got certified to do DISC values and attributes, we learned that we should not necessarily make the person fit the role. We should create the role or place a person in the role that fits who they are naturally. So, Corey, talk to me a little bit about that, especially with your experience with team engagement, the importance of leaders recognizing the natural gifts and talents of their employees and then placing them in the role that fits them versus trying to make them fit the role.
Yeah, so I'll start out by saying, and I'm going to upset a few companies by saying this, but typically your larger companies, they don't believe in that mantra. They just, I hired you, I owe you check, you get check, you do work. When in reality, a lot of smaller businesses try to fit people into the right places, but you shouldn't like disregard that mentality when you go into a big business, right? When you have 4,000 employees, when you got 1,000 employees, those types of businesses, you shouldn't disregard those principles because you're letting dollars walk out the door. And on average, it costs about, I believe it's like $5,000 to replace someone, between your marketing, between your application process, drugs, the testing and all that stuff, the training. And let me back up. Depending on how deeply you train someone, it's not even 5,000, right? I've seen companies spend upwards of $30,000, $40,000 training someone to do the job. And essentially, maybe they're fit for this other position, or maybe they're fit for this other job function. You're just letting dollars walk out your door. And we talk about all the time with companies where it's all productivity, right? How productive can my company be? How can we push the product, the sales, the customer service and all this other stuff? But we never sit back and say, how do we do it most effectively? And I believe that, process will never overpower people. Meaning I can put a process together and I'm only going to get, you process the hell out of something and you're going to get this result that's phenomenal. But if you get the people behind that same process, I guarantee you might see it 2 or 3 times fold, right? But what happens is we say process, you fit the process, right? It's like an old football teams, right? Both of us are Ravens fans, and you see that offense goes through Lamar Jackson.
Right.
They made that offense for him. You see a lot of these good quarterbacks that the offense starts to mold around them. A Russell Wilson, for example, the offense starts molding around that person. Even a Drew Brees, that offense molds around that person. They don't ask Drew Brees when he was playing at least to do zone read options and all that stuff. For those of y'all who don't know, there's a bunch of football terms, but they don't ask him to run around like that because that's not who he is. They don't ask, Tom Brady to do the same thing that Cam Newton to do, even though he stunk it up this weekend. You have to mold your player. You have to mold your person into the role that's necessary for them, I guess you could say. And that goes into you shifting whatever role you want them to be. Like, what do you need me to do? Right? I'll take somebody like myself. You're not going to put me behind a computer and say, hey, can you please look at 8,000 spreadsheets a day?
Mm-hmm.
I'll probably be bald by the end of the day, but that's not the best use of my talent, right? Like you have to understand who you have and then put them in the right place. A lot of companies, as you're listening to this, I need you to adopt that process because you're letting dollars flow out. You're letting productivity flow out. You're letting morale flow out. You're letting all these things that actually make you a great company flow out simply by not squashing your ego and saying, you know what, you would be really good. You would be a really good fit for this. Let's do this instead. Nah, what you're saying is my process is, and then you start to pound your chest. You're like, my process is the greatest thing ever. You have to fit what I said to do. So I just think more companies should adopt that mindset, of can we fit the person to do the best job of what their gifts and talents are.
Yeah, I think that's really good. And I love the football analogy. And if we look at all sports, you get put in the position where your talent is, and then it builds around you in that position. I think in corporate America, and even for small businesses that are just starting out and just hiring, so for instance, if I need a social media person, I may just take the first person I can get and want them to be great at social media copy, great at graphics, great at this or that. And that may not be what that person really wants to do. But to your point, it's like, I'm paying you, so just do the job. With that, you get mediocre work and you get half work, and you don't get long term commitment. Because if a person's in a position and they're not happy and they're stressed, that paycheck may keep them there for a little while, but eventually they're going to get an opportunity to go somewhere where they can best have their talent served. So if you're thinking about hiring, or if you already have a team, go back and look at, are the people, or and ask them. I think, Corey, the hardest thing that most companies go through is just asking. They have the feedback, or they have the open door policy, but it's not pushed out there wholeheartedly. And I honestly think, Corey, and this may be a whole nother topic for another day, we need to do away with the open feedback and the open door policy, and have leaders actually go out and seek the information. Not, well, my door's open. Whenever you want to come in, and
Yes.
people don't come. Be a leader and go out and ask, hey, this position that you're in, do you feel like you're using all your talents? Does it resonate with you? Do you feel fulfilled and complete? Are you happy doing the job? Is it stressful or impactful to you in a negative way? Asking those questions, and just take the feedback, and somebody say, yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, let's see, what would you rather do? And be honest. Well, you know what? I just don't have a position like that right now. Maybe we can create something. Maybe we can do a hybrid. You do a little bit of this, and then we open up something for you where you want to be. And so there's many avenues that leaders can do. But I think, Corey, in this sense, leaders have to start being more proactive, and not just proactive about how can I get the next client to get the next check in, but how can I be a leader for my internal customer, which is my team, and put them in the right place. Again, you have to understand that everybody is different. Everybody's motivated by different things. They have different values. We think differently, and then how we behave is different. So, depending on the position or the role that you have to look at all aspects of that to see if the person that you're looking at, or the person that you already have, is the right person for that position. And I think the butts and seats just has to go away. It, I'm not trying to put as many people in here to just throw money at the problem. That's another issue with big companies. They just throw money at it. Well, that person ain't work, bring the next person in. That person ain't work, bring the next person in. So, Corey, when we're thinking about, now let's flip it. I know we're giving leadership tips and we're just talking about the leader. What does the actual employee, what is their role in this? What should they do to, in speaking with their employer, to say, hey, you know what, this may not be quite right? How do you get comfortable enough to have a conversation like that?
Yeah, I think especially because I like calling it like reverse coaching or like backdoor coaching, I guess you could say. Because what a lot of people don't realize is you have a voice as an employee, but you have to position yourself correctly. If you come through the door, you be like, why won't you help me? They're gonna be like, oh, what are you talking about? Right. But if you come in and say, hey, look, I've been doing, number one, perform to some type of level, right? If and the reason I say that is because you have to gain trust by people. If everyone came in and they say, hey, I'm just absolutely terrible at my job because I'm not giving effort. So let me back like step back and say, maybe you're just not good at the job. But I truly believe that most of the jobs that we do in life, like they're not really hard to get a baseline level of performance to where you're pretty decent at it. Maybe you just don't like doing it. So what you want to do is at least get to that level. And then what you want to start to do, I always live by the mantra, if you're the only person that knows what you want to do, that's a problem. So you have to start getting in front of people. Start meeting with your supervisors, with your managers, with your talent development departments, and saying, you know what, I'm really good at this. And you talked about it, Tyrus. Maybe there's a position that doesn't exist for it right now. But I have seen in companies where people start to speak up and say, man, I really would love to do this. Right. and something very similar comes open, or they create this position that's very similar to what you said, and all of a sudden that person starts getting moved towards that spot. So it's also up to you as an employee to go and let people know what you want to do, right? Helping is hard, and I'll get to that later, but we need to know what you want also, and you got to be open about it. So take the time to go seek the info. I'll be honest, I'm more on the aggressive side. I'm more on the, like, I'm going to get it, right? So I'm going to go to your office and say, hey, I want to do this. How do I do it? Right? Not everybody's like that, but what you want to do, that's the only step in my book that I know you can take to get in front of people. That way they can understand what you want to do, what your skill set is, and how you need to move through that. Otherwise, you're just going to sit in the desk and they're going to say, well, Corey's doing a pretty good job at his job and he's suffering in silence. So take that step forward, get with somebody, manager, talent development, HR, whoever that may be, and start to have those conversations with them as far as, like, this is my skill set. What should I do from here? And they can help guide you with that.
Yeah, that's really good. And, to wrap this up and get on out of here, the two things that I think both leader and team members should take away is, number one, as a leader, look at your people, understand the job and the role that you want them to do, and then ask them, does it fit for them? And continuously ask. So don't just have an open door policy. Be proactive. Go out and ask your people, survey them, poll them, speak to them, have lunches. However you need to do it, do it. And then as a team member, ask again, hey, if the open door policy exists and your manager isn't proactive or your leader isn't proactive, go to them and say, hey, look, I really appreciate the job. There's some other things that I would like to do. I feel like I have some talents in these areas. Is there something we can do to move me in a position or a role, or create something that would allow that? If you don't like talking to people and you want to be reserved, send a nice long worded email. Do something, because the door swings both ways. Sometimes you, like Corey said, you got to ask for what you want. And then as a leader, sometimes you got to go and you got to make sure that your team has what they want and what they need. So if everybody's working together, if you caught our other episode, we talked about integrity. If everybody's leading with integrity, this conversation is easier to have. Corey, any last words?
Yeah, I would just say, I mentioned it before. So helping is hard, right? As a leader, we go into it and we say, okay, so what do you want? And then it's kind of like we have to peel back these layers on individuals to really figure out what is it that you want, right? There's a small percentage of people who are actually self-aware. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, because that means we have a lot of room for growth and figuring out who we are as a person. But what that means is, a lot of times we can get sent in directions where that may not necessarily be the right thing. And helping is hard. So that means I have to identify what you want. I have to identify whether that actually fits you or not. Because there's a lot of people who say, I deserve X type of position. Well, you know what? That's not really you.
Mm-hmm.
I can't really take an analyst, right, who's not a people person, who's not a really good public speaker or anything like that, and say, hey, go hop up on stage and get the company riled up, for this next incentive that we're going to give or whatever. They're probably going to be like, absolutely not. You got to understand that helping is hard, and we have to push people in the right direction. Don't just say it. You actually have to step in and do it. And that's the hard part. A lot of leaders, they just say, my door is open, I will help you. But then when it comes to help, they're like, oh, what now?
Yeah. Facts. Corey, I appreciate you for dropping that knowledge on us. These are leadership topics that are very important to growing, building, scaling a business, and just staying afloat. Even if you just want to have one or two employees, as you grow and you stay with that nice, tight team, you still have to pour in these same leadership tips. Too many people take for granted that they're just people working with me for a paycheck. So think about this. Take this information, apply it. We ain't just trying to give you theory or just conversation. We want you to go and implement. So again, thank everyone for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.